Welcome to the Starting SaaS podcast. My name is Michaela Richmond, and this podcast is all about creating a foundation for SaaS. Welcome to the Starting SaaS podcast. Today, I'm very excited to welcome onto the podcast Keith Dawson. He is an agency owner of Phone Ready Leads. In his past, he did insurance consulting. He was a financial representative, and awesome. He gave us some information on himself. So he is a Green Bay Packers fan, massive Green Bay Packers fan. He has 3 kids, and he has been a husband for 10 years. So family man. I'm very, very excited to welcome him onto the podcast to talk about, agencies, how they work, how they help B2B SaaS companies do their jobs better, and then also sales, cold calling, mindset, etc. So welcome onto the podcast.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you about sales, cold calling, how to grow your value inside of a SaaS company if you choose to get into the fast-paced world of SaaS sales.
Yes, I'm very excited as well. Okay, so first, favorite question. How did you get into SaaS?
I by coming into this cold calling agency, right? As buying into Phone Ready Leads, they had a really cool model of if you want to do like SDR work, right? Like essentially setting meetings for different companies and kind of helping to grow their revenue. With Phone Ready Leads, you're able to kind of plug into this system, and then you get to work with any company that you want. And what's happened is a lot of companies in SaaS have come to me to help grow their outbound program, their cold calling specifically. So that's how I kind of got into SaaS, and it's a really interesting space. I've only been doing it for a few months here, but all of the last 6 years of selling using cold calling has helped me be really successful doing helping them with their growth.
Have you seen a big difference in like the way that people sell in SaaS versus in other industries?
Yeah, actually, when I was like doing insurance sales and financial planning, it was very consultative. And not saying that SaaS isn't consultative, but these are sales cycles that can take 3 months at the shortest and 18 months at the longest. And there's some SaaS products that take a long time, but the ones that I've been associated with have a much shorter sales cycle, right? Call, book a demo, give a free trial, 2-3 weeks later, they're subscribed to the platform or whatever it is. So it's more just like volume sales, which is cool to be a part of, but not as long. So that's like the biggest thing that I've seen. Again, not all SaaS companies are quick sales, and some of them take a long time.
That makes a lot of sense. Which do you prefer?
I like the quicker sales.
Okay, and why? Just because it's fast and you get to see more clients?
Yeah, I think so. Just like I've noticed like when you have a very narrow thing that you need to focus on, the more like narrow and deep opposed to like far and wide, which I'm realizing now that doesn't make any sense. My attention span for those deals and my ability to follow up with them is much tighter in like a smaller time window opposed to the long like relationship building. I'm just kind of the way my brain works. Some people are great at it, right? That's just not the way that I like to. I found that I like to pursue clients.
That makes a lot of sense. That's cool. That's cool. It's cool to understand yourself and like how you work and then finding the place that you can do that best. Okay, so you said that you bought into Phone Ready Leads. Why did you decide to do that?
I kind of like what you just talked about. It's like I wanted to try like a faster pace atmosphere, and I always thought about what would it be like to be like an SDR. So that's like most times a starting sales role in SaaS companies, right? You're just calling, emailing, running these sequences and cadences to book meetings. I was like, I would always be curious about that. But the more I looked into it, I just could not come from a place where I was a small business owner owning my own agency in insurance to going to working, having a boss, having quotas that you have to hit. So Phone Ready Leads is a way to like be an SDR helps, run the same process that you would at a normal SaaS company. But you get to be your own business owner, right?
Mm.
You make your own hours, you make your own quotas. It's all commission based or sales based. So that's the one part that if people are looking to jump into it, it can be a little intimidating. But I came from that world where you kind of eat what you kill, if you will. So I was comfortable with that.
That makes sense. Okay, so agencies. We haven't talked about agencies on the podcast yet, but agencies help SaaS companies to do a better job, to, close more deals or whatever. Can you first give us like a brief introduction into agencies and then explain how they work with SaaS companies?
Yeah. So basically, it's a way to outsource work to either someone that has the workforce or has more expertise or can do it more cheaply than what you can do inside your own organization, right? So in my space, a lot of people like to use outsourced countries for their calling. I'm sure we've all had those car warranty calls from someone in the Philippines or India. For sure that it's being outsourced. So those are three of the main reasons that companies are outsourcing. And then they're outsourcing to an agency that says, hey, we're really good at email marketing. Hey, we're really good at, talent recruiting, right? Recruiting. Us, we're really good at using the phone as a go-to-market channel. So instead of paying someone a full salary plus benefits plus the time it takes to train and get them up to speed, which usually takes 3 to 6 months for a starting SDR person to get up to where they're hitting quota consistently. Usually, this is a way to do that all quicker without having the overhead of an employee.
Okay, and how do they connect with agencies? Like how do SaaS companies get into touch with agencies and then connect with them and make sure that they're, working together well?
I can tell you how I connect with them is we just call them. I'm a big believer in the phone, but they're the same way that most people would get it. Well, I wouldn't say the same way because they're not going to Amazon, but Google or someone reached out to them or they have a contact at another company that they want to use a referral, right? So there's really 4 channels to reach out to anyone in B2B space. It's social. Well, you start with your personal networks, then social media, email, and phone call. Those are if you're this starts getting into some of the cold calling philosophy, but those are really the only channels to reach out to someone. But yeah, as far as in my experience, we call SaaS companies to see if they want to outsource some of their work to us.
And then who are you dealing with? Who are you trying to find that decision maker?
Yeah, so for me specifically, it would be the vice president of sales, the CEO, president, sometimes the head of marketing, but most often it's a VP of sales. And depending on what role you're what your agency specializes in, you're going to be reaching out to a different person. I have people who are reaching out to IT directors, is it the FISO? Is that what they call it? Something like that. Like the technology officers, right?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yes. And this is interesting to me also because um it's basically like whenever you're an agency, what metric do you impact? And then the person that's in charge of that metric in another company. That's probably who you should reach out to.
Exactly. Yep. Whoever owns that problem that you think your solution can solve for.
How do you so whenever you I know that this has to do with your business, so you don't have to give all of your secrets away, but whenever it comes to pitching somebody on your solution or your product, or well, it's a service,
Yep.
how do you go about that whenever it comes to like what are the things that you're trying to highlight for them?
Yeah. So our biggest thing is we can make your best reps, the ones who are trying to set appointments, we can make them 4 to 5 times as efficient. so you can grow more quickly or reduce headcount, which sounds super brutal. I get that. But there's only about 50 or 60% of reps are actually hitting quota. And there's a lot of different things that go into that, not just because of poor job performance. What am I pitching? Sorry, I got on a tangent there. What am I pitching to them? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, not you don't have to give the specifics, but I think that the I guess the answer that you gave was satisfying to me. Just like you're highlighting the things that, okay, you know the metrics that they care about, and you know how they measure their objectives. They're like, okay, these are the objectives. These are how we measure the objectives, and you know, like the different variables that are involved, and so you're accounting for the variables that matter to them. And
Yep, you're right. Yep. So usually like VP of sales or chief revenue officer, they're responsible for revenue, right? And if you kind of boil that all down, the place that starts like that revenue cycle or that revenue chain is initiating with a prospect, whether that's email, social, networking, or phone. It's starting that initial conversation. And usually the metric that most people care about is meetings booked and meetings held, or demos booked or demos held, which I can go into the philosophy of, is that the right way to go about it or not? But that's the metric that we're trying to solve for. It's like, how do we get your reps into more conversations, with the idea that if they can get into more conversations more quickly, they can book more meetings, which you book more meetings, more revenue comes in, more revenue equals more growth, right? Like that whole chain of events start happening, but it comes down to like the conversation. So we solve for having more conversations.
you mentioned whenever you didn't want to go into the tangent that like sales changed and that it's kind of harder to hit the same numbers. And I was wondering why that is.
Hit the same like quotas, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of interesting things around that in SaaS, especially in like SaaS startups. So I think it's called Bridgepoint, that does a study on like SDR criteria. And I think like the average SDR is like 60% of the SDRs are actually hitting quota on any given year. And there's a lot of different things into that, like certain, like when you're using startups, because most SaaS, they all start as startups. When you're going to get funding, there's certain metrics that you have to hit to unlock like the next level of funding. It's like in these like tranches, it's called. So one of those metrics could potentially be, hey, we're going to have X amount of employees at this date, and if we hit X amount of employees at this date, we get more funding, because it's built into like the business plan. So one of the reasons I think those numbers can be a little skewed is that they're SaaS companies, to unlock funding, are hiring unqualified, unmotivated, untrainable people, potentially. But also just there's so much, I'm not a big fan of automation. There's been just a huge reliance on like automation, these sequences and this AI to try to start conversations. So that's been more challenging to actually break through all the noise. Like LinkedIn used to be a great place to kind of initiate conversations. Now, I mean, I'm sure you get 4 or 5 a day from these automated messages that, like, hey, I saw you were in my network. We had some mutual friends. You want to connect? If you accept that, a day later, you're going to get a pitch for something. So I think it's just harder to break through the noise of this kind of these massive automated campaigns.
Yeah, what do you think is so there has to be a balance though, right? So like the good thing with the automation is the fact that you do get to speed things up, you get to automate things, you get to do more things for less, and then you're not doing as many manual tasks. But then the bad part about it,
Correct.
like you explained, was the fact that, for example, on LinkedIn, like first off, nobody wants a pitch that's not personal. Nobody wants a pitch in general on LinkedIn, but like nobody really wants a pitch that's not personal. And then number two, like there are even the automated hello, hi, thanks for connecting messages, and like that's nice. It's cool, but like at the same time, there's the over reliance in automation has taken out a lot of the humanity. So that's not good.
Yeah,
What
100%. Yeah.
what do you think is the
Um,
line? Or like what do you think is
the
the
line
balance?
between, I think there's a way I know there's a way to build personalized automation that is not as time intensive. Time doesn't take a lot of time, based on like, hey, if you know CROs in this particular industry or space are dealing with this kind of problem, you can address that, right? Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that you have, and for us, it's like, hey, I noticed you have inside sales reps. Uh, I thought this might be relevant to you. This is like, could be a potential email. Like, we help growing SaaS companies uh, make their SDRs more effective by getting them into 8 to 12 conversations for every hour that they spend on the phone. Would you be interested in like reaching out to me? It's like, okay, I'm a CRO. I do have inside sales. I am in a SaaS startup. This feels a little more personalized. Um, yeah, I don't know what that balance is. As far as like the fundamentals of sales hasn't changed. I mean, I've read books back to the 1930s. It has not changed. It still starts with like a conversation, like human to human interaction. Like that part hasn't changed in like the B2B SaaS space. That hasn't changed. And I think the cool thing is like the phone's making a comeback, which is cool for us because a lot of people shifted away from that because it can be a daunting task to sit on the phone for hours on end, making dials and getting rejected or your perception of rejection. It can be challenging. So like it's easy to send emails. Right? If they say no, it's like, it doesn't really matter. But we just bring that same mentality into like the phone conversation.
Mm-hmm. Or I mean, they could just not answer on emails. It's really low
Yeah,
bar.
right. Yeah, you're right. The response rates are in the single digits, right?
Yeah, that's rough. The reason that things are going back to the phone kind of is because that's a more direct approach. Like you get to them more directly rather than, email or socials.
Yeah, I think it's it's just a way to have like more information, more touch points in a quicker amount of time. The reason people gave up on the phone is because the the they saw that it wasn't as effective. Like it's much easier to send, I saw a video of a guy like dancing, like I'm about to go to work today. He hit enter and 400 emails sent out. It's like job done. Like it's nice to say, I sent 500 emails today. I did a good job. It's so simple in my mind. And I'm not bashing people who do email marketing. I think that absolutely has a place in everything. Again, like if you think about the 4 channels that people can communicate in, that's definitely one of them. The phone, the reason people have given up on that more so is that there's this low connect rate. So have you done cold calling yourself? Are you familiar with that process or?
I've seen it done. I worked in a commercial real estate, I guess, firm, and
Sure.
I saw it done all day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough.
Oh yeah.
Takes a special person to crank out 150 dials manually. Um, but usually you're having a conversation after every 25 to 30 dials. So a 3 to 5% dial to connect rate is what we call it. So how many dials does it take for you to have a live conversation with the person of interest, your CEO, your CRO, your CTO, CM, whatever the title is? Usually, industry average is 3 to 5%. What makes it so fun, why I loved working with phone ready leads, is they take that to 20 to 30%. So you're having a live
Interesting.
conversation. Yeah, you're having a live conversation with the person of interest every 3 to 6 dials, just over and over and over and again. So if the average SDR is making 40 to 50 dials a day, they're having 3, maybe 4 conversations every single day. So in a given week, they're having, let's call it 15. We're having 12 conversations every hour. So it's become a much more effective go-to-market channel when you're calling the people who you know will likely pick up the phone. And on any given list, there's a small section, usually 20 to 40%, that will engage in a phone conversation. And we just target those. Leave
That's
the rest
not a
to
bad idea.
email marketing.
Yeah, that's actually a smart idea. So your qualm with extreme automation is like, okay, if we were a little bit smarter, then we could target people better, and then we wouldn't have to automate so much. Is that another thing that you think, or am I putting words into your mouth?
Um, yeah, potentially like that's the solution, right? Like what if you just segmented your data a little bit better? What if you segmented the people, right? If you had a list of 1,000 people, if you knew 300 of them would answer a phone call if you called them, why not just put that into a different bucket? Hey, we're just going to call these people. We don't need to send them a 15-stage multi-touch sequence. We'll just call them. We won't leave a voicemail. We'll just call them. Then maybe there's another 300 or 400 that are, hey, we know these people are likely never to answer the phone. This would be great to run like a voicemail campaign or an email campaign. And then the rest, hey, we don't know if they're if they actually answer the phone or not. We can't confirm that this is their right phone number. Let's do an email drip campaign and some social media, some LinkedIn. So let's just have better insight into the behaviors of our prospects instead of treating every single one exactly the same.
I think that's brilliant. I don't know why that's not done already.
Well, I think so too. I have you ever, there's this story, and I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent, but this is a fun one, where 4 monkeys are in a cage and there's a bunch of bananas at the top with a rope leading up to it. Are you familiar with this?
No.
I think about this a lot as far as I'm thinking about scripts and like how do we get to where we are now? So essentially, like one monkey starts climbing up to get these bananas, right? And the researcher sprays them with cold water. They jump down. The next one goes up, cold water. All 4 of these people, all 4 of these monkeys, eventually learn if I crawl up the rope, I'm going to get hit with cold water. A new monkey comes in, never been sprayed with cold water, starts to climb up. The other 3 monkeys grab the monkey down and won't let him go up. Eventually, because they're like, hey, you're gonna get sprayed with cold water, don't go up. Eventually, you're gonna have 4 monkeys in there that have never been sprayed with cold water, but still will not go up and try to get bananas. And they don't know why, just because that's the way it's always been. Sometimes I think like we start on this path, we have good intention, and now we end up where we're in fully automation. We have these weird scripts that we're trying to engage prospects with, these little games we play. And we don't really know where it all started or like what the end goal was, at least in my mind.
That's so interesting. I think that's problematic. I do think that's like you learn how to do the things that you're supposed to do, and then so I guess it's kind of like a take on Newton's stand on the shoulders of giants. Like that's the purpose of it, right? Like there's this thing where it's like, okay, somebody has learned something, and you're supposed to take what they've learned and build off of it. But I guess the problem is that we haven't, or we're taking things that are not concrete and we're acting as though they are.
What if they just got lucky,
Yeah, interesting.
right? And then like we learned to do something just based off of luck and probability, right? Who knows? I don't know. But I think about that a lot when I'm dealing with scripts. So what's interesting, and the thing that's changed like cold calling for me is I had this idea of like, what if I just treated this person I'm calling, right, complete stranger, like they're a new acquaintance. Like I'm going to my son's school and I meet one of the parents and we're just chatting. What if that was it? And my tones changed, the way that I engage with the prospects changed. The words aren't the same, but only 10% of the only 10% of what you say is actually taking in a lot of its tone and body language. Anyways, different mindset of like, hey, what if this is just a new friend I'm just talking to the first time?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I think that's a really great way to look at it. Just almost reframing for yourself to figure out how you can perform better. Like it is just good sales is you just sharing value, like explaining value, sharing value,
Exactly.
helping people to understand it. So then you don't have to play games. You kind of just be authentic, find ways to do that better.
Yeah. Awesome. Authenticity. Yeah. Because sometimes you forget, you forget that that other person is a human being,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's like, yeah, you don't forget it, but it's like a human being that has other things going on in their life, kids, work, illness, pain, sadness, happiness, things we're looking forward to, a job to do. And then sometimes we can just get stuck and it's like, why aren't they answering my email? I've tried so hard. We called before. I've talked to you. It's like, they got things going on, like, just like you do. They're no better than you, no worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So this is a slight tangent, and then we'll get back into the, just all of the other stuff, the cold calling, going in a little bit further in
Hmm.
agencies. Um, what is your ideal like future vision of sales? Like what do you hope for sales in the future of it?
No one's ever asked me that before. And I think like the human component is like back in it, right? Where it's like, hey, we're just, we work on agreements and not expectations. Like, hey, like, we're meeting today. Like, would it make sense? Like, after this call, if it makes sense, can we agree to move to this step, right? Um, yeah, maybe just the human component of it all. I don't have a good answer for you. That is that will cause philosophers a lot of fits to figure that out. What's the
That's a good answer. I like it. I think that's a challenge is how, keeping on scaling up technology while continuing to retain and add more humanity, especially in these
Yeah,
functions that are, becoming functions.
yeah. I mean, maybe a question I have thought on is like, what's the future of business? And I really love like the Simon Sinek view. Like, what if we created businesses where we actually not actually care, but like the employees came before the numbers, right? Like, especially like now when employ businesses are cutting staff to make the bottom line look better, or they build up this big head count to go public, and then they cut 900 employees over Zoom. And I'm sure you saw that, better.com. Um, like, what if we just like treated them like our children? Like, if times got tough for me, I want to go to my youngest kid and be like, hey, you're the last one here, man. Like, it's been really hard to support you. We had to let someone go. You're kind of the least valuable piece. I would never, ever do that. Even if like my neighbor next door needed help, like I'd help them. Like, you move in, right? Like, I love you, man. I would love to see that be like the heart of business. I guess it'd drip down to sales, obviously. Um, but I love that. I love that vision for the future businesses of America. And there's
Yeah,
people who are,
that would change everything. Like
what if
it
you
would,
love going to work every day? You felt safe when you were there.
yeah. Or there's another idea that like I know that some people really like the one person business model where it's like there are a lot of one person people, well not one person people, but one person businesses where people are, finding their niche, and then I guess they'd either be freelancers or they'd be like a one person agency almost, which I don't know. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think about that?
Yeah, that seems like that's like the world we're in now. Right? Like the Great Resignation. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that
People,
is what it's called.
yeah, people like doing gig work, like the gig economy.
Mm-hmm.
I think like millennials, which I'm square in the middle of, care more about like experiences and less about like climbing the ladder. I mean, there's people that are do that, right? But just care more about like our own like work-life balance has been way more in the forefront of our minds than our parents and their parents. Just we've grown up in a world that we've had abundance all over the place. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
operate a little bit differently. Like, we don't need to like stay at a job for 30 years because that's what our parents did, and you don't know when bad times will come. Like,
Mm-hmm. So this is cool. Sales is so you said you don't need to stay in the same job for, your whole life. And that's entirely true. But there's this concept that I learned recently. It's called skill stacking. It's basically like stacking the skills
Mm,
that you have. And sales is a massive, massive skill to gain. Becoming really, really good at sales, having that on your, I guess, skill stack,
mhm,
because then you can use it in many different ways. Like you don't have to
mhm.
stay as an SDR in this position. You don't have to stay as a sales representative in any position particularly. Sales is very versatile. Um, so first, what has been your experience with sales? Like you've done sales for a long time. You understand sales. How has it, I guess, helped your life to understand sales and to be good at it?
Yeah. Alex Hormozy, is that the skill stacking? Is that where you got that from?
Yep.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I love Alex. His content. Yeah,
He's
uh,
good.
he's really good. I've started to I started to get inundated. Like I inundate myself with all these different influencers and different ideas, and like Keenan from Gap Selling. I was like, I need to do that. And it's like, oh, um, Mike Weinberg, got to do that. Like all these guys, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to focus on one guy, and it's Alex Hormozy. So
Really?
that's the only guy that I'm taking sales advice from right now
Why?
because of what he's like been able to do and grow in his own company. Like from being a failure, not a failure. He's definitely not a failure. Never was. Being down to his last dollar because of things that happened in his business partner screwing him over, to having $100 million in revenue with different companies. And he has a very simple like framework of how to do that, and he explains it so um, simply and elegantly, but also like he's around my same age, so that's like fun. Like most of the guys that I was listening to before are quite a bit older than me, the old dogs. Anyways, love him. My experience with sales has been an absolute roller coaster. And sales didn't start for me 6 years ago when I got into financial planning. Sales started for me, oh gosh, when I was 10 years old, going door to door selling popcorn for the Boy Scouts, or going door to door and selling gummy bears, right? Like all these drives, selling steaks. I remember selling like a steak raffle for my Pop Warner team. Started all the way back then. Interestingly, my mom just let me gallivant around the town to do that. Different time, right? But now, like it's just been experiences with sales. Sometimes I'm having conversations with everyday people, which sounds really arrogant, but just like going around my life and like I'm navigating conversations with people like so well. I'm like, holy crap, like I just got free parking a block away from the stadium after a guy said, nah, I can't have you park here. 2 minutes later, I'm parking there. Like that's not me manipulating. That's like me being in sales and using different techniques. Like it's just made me like an overall like better human being in the world, not just like negotiating parking spots, but controlling tone, controlling temperament, emotion. Like it's hard to be a really effective seller if you can't control your own emotions. So I'm a better husband because of sales. I'm a better father. I'm a better friend. I'm a better human. I make overall because of sales. But also I allowed sales to like change me and guide me. Um, so that's kind of the warmer, the fluffy part of it. It also has made me way more money than I thought would be possible because of like sales is hard. Like talking about skill stacking, if you can prospect effectively using the phone, you will never be out of a job. Companies are all there's like 70,000 companies indeed for SDRs who cold call. If you can do it well, you'll never be out of a job. So that's like part of the skill stacking, like that one piece, but also like learning how to navigate conversations is super helpful. Does that answer the question pretty well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. So can you give us like a horror story of your learning? Because to say most of the time salespeople have a couple of not failures, but like learning stories where they had to learn a lesson hard, or they, had to power through a couple of things.
Yeah, I failed out of the financial planning thing because I ran out of prospects. Right. So,
Interesting.
and I did not like cold calling. Like it would take me 20 minutes to pump myself up to make 5 calls, and then I'd be off the phone. I'd be done. And then I was really successful for like 9 months there because I was using my natural market. I was 24, didn't have really like high high income friends or anything or family members. So 6 or 7 months later, I was like, I got to be done. I can't do this. But then I got some cold call coaching. I started to get into high volume cold calling and realized, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I'm learning from it. And then from there, like hit six figures at a second company. Like it's completely like changed my life. But yeah, feeling out of that company was hard, right? Like thought I would always be there. Promised some people that I would always be there. They asked me directly, hey, Keith, you've changed a lot of jobs. I want to invest with you, but I need to know you're going to be here a while. Yep, I'll be here a while. Burn some friendships because of just not understanding that dynamic. Hence why I love cold calling, because I can call a guy on Monday. He can tell me to go fly a kite. I don't have to see him at Thanksgiving. I don't have to see him at Christmas. I don't ever have to talk to him again if I don't want to. The interesting thing is I could call him 3 or 4 days later. He will completely forget the conversation. In fact, one of my first days of cold calling at this other insurance company, a guy cursed me out. Said, "You're calling my personal cell phone. Like, how'd you get this number? Like, don't ever call me again." And I was like, yikes. It was a Monday. I told my wife about it, and she's like, "That's actually the guy you were supposed to call to clean our carpets. You need to call him back." And I was like, "I'm definitely not doing that." She's like, "You're doing it." So Tuesday, I called him. Hey, Aaron, I think his name was. I remember this one. I called you yesterday, cold called you. You were super mad at me about doing that. My wife wants you to clean my carpets. Like, would you feel comfortable doing business with me? He's like, what? What were you calling about yesterday? I have no idea. Completely forgot. And that was like an amazing experience for me to learn very early on that most of these prospects are getting 10, 15 calls a day. I am just another voice in another line. They don't know who I am, care about me. Like, it's awesome. It was such a freeing experience in my first day of volume cold calling.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It lowers the bar. Like there's a high bar. You spend 20 minutes to get yourself ready to make 5 calls because there's this, I guess you put so much weight on yourself. And that's interesting that
Yeah,
the thing that changed everything was the thing that took away the weight. It's like nobody remembers. It's okay.
yeah. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't know me. I'm still, I know who I am. His nature doesn't change my nature.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. So man, I've had calls where people, like literally last week, a guy called me a liar. He's like, "You're a liar," and hung up. Called him back. Said, "Hey, I actually did send you that email. Came from Keith at Empower Sales." Called him 3 days later. "Hey, I forget his name. Hey, we had a conversation. You actually called me a liar. Like it seemed like I caught you in the worst possible day. Like you got a half a minute?" He talked to me for 2 or 3 minutes. He said a couple of times, like, "Hey, I'm really in a bad mood." All right. He's like, I just, this isn't interesting at all. Like, this isn't a good fit. Like, good luck to you. He got off the phone. Like I could tell he was like reserving, like holding back all of his emotion, but I addressed it immediately. So another thing that sales has done, especially, cold prospecting has allowed me to be more direct in my life, to like address problems, address hard situations that come up in friendships and relationships in general. Yeah, it's just part of prospecting, cold calling, all that.
Interesting. Okay, you mentioned that you did cold call coaching, and that was what kind of changed everything
Yeah,
for you. What was that
yeah.
like?
It was it was a very different technique that I don't use ever anymore. But it got me confident with getting into conversations, and I was booking meetings with you know millionaires, millionaire real estate agents. We're selling $10 million homes, and it's like, how if I can do this, I can talk to anyone. And then that company Like I actually got hired on to do some cold calling consulting. That company fizzled out 6 months in while I 6 months into it. So I kind of fell into this other job and I had to cold call to survive. And I was like, this is my last shot at sales. So I'm just, the only thing I need to do is cold call. And I had learned about it before. And then it's just like a commitment to continuing to learn. Like that was like the start of it, this cold call coaching that I did to kind of break the ice of that fear of call reluctancy, and then just being dedicated to learning more.
Mm-hmm. What did you, so I mean, it was, you were kind of put in a position where you didn't have a choice. Like you either had a cold call or, not succeed. And I guess that's good because you didn't, like, you couldn't make excuses for yourself. It was like the excuses were outweighed by the fact that there was something on the line. Um, for beginners, what are some of the tips that you usually give? You had your whole experience, you did the whole thing. If you were to go back, what would you do differently?
Mm. I wouldn't do anything differently because it created who I was, which is awesome. But I was in like the reason I was successful there is like I had like it's either cold call or go back to the factory, right? Like that was the option. Go back to you know doing this manual labor that I didn't love. Um, I would honestly like start with like mindset and belief over like the skill will come if you stay dedicated to the craft because there's no shortcut for time. You can read all these books, you can do role playing. There's zero shortcut for actually having live conversations over the phone. The only shortcut is to increase the amount of calls you can have and shorten the time in between, which what Phone Ready Leads does. But I would say like just it's okay. Like that's another person on the other line. Like treat them as like a friend, treat them as a new acquaintance, and your value as a human being doesn't matter, isn't dependent on if that person books a meeting or not, if that person yells at you or not. So Josh Braun, if you're familiar, says detach from the outcome. Don't tie up your own self-worth in booking a meeting. Don't tie up your own self-worth in closing a deal. Would be like the advice I would give. All the other, the skill stuff, if you stick with cold calling, if you stick with it, stick with sales, you're going to pick stuff up, especially if you're coachable and you want to lean in and you have good mentors and just replicate what they're doing. I gave like 3 different things there, but really like detach from the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Those are all 3 amazing, amazing tips, and I think that, like, if I were in sales, I would definitely take those to heart. You mentioned mentors. So there are the direct mentors that you have direct access to, and then there are mentors that you can find. So for example, we mentioned Alex Hormozy. Like in some senses, Alex Hormozy is your mentor. Are there any people that you would
Yeah.
recommend that young salespeople follow on, socials, LinkedIn, whatever?
Yeah. Follow me. I put out cool posts. Ryan Reisert is the founder of Phone Ready Leads. He does a live cold calling show most days. It's been hit or miss recently, but he's a great person. Um, Townsend Wardlaw has a new. He talks much more about the belief and the person doing the calling. He calls it the being that's doing the sales, and not so much the sales. Because if I had a conversation with you and I was trying to sell you, and I was sad and nervous and like, what is Michaela going to think? Is she going to like it? Like, it changes the tone. It changes the
Mm-hmm.
whole feeling. If I'm like, hey, this is the best thing since sliced bread. If I don't tell Michaela about this, it's going to be a detriment to her. I would be a jerk if I didn't share this with her. Right? It's like a different, right? Feeling like you're enough and all that. Anyways, love Townsend. Yeah. Also, like you, again, that you can get inundated with all these different people, but find somebody in the company who is as at the level of success that you're at, and then just mirror everything they do. Right? Like it's okay to be a parrot. Like you'll figure it out as time goes. And what I've learned is I've continued to kind of up the people that I'm interacting with.
Mm.
And it was never like an intentional thing either. It was never like intentional, like, all right, I need to start being around higher producers. I just maybe naturally gravitated towards it. Because the conversations I'm having now about growing $1 million agency, about helping our company grow to $100 million, or not conversations I had 6 years ago, not even thoughts I had 6 years ago. I was like, how can I, 6 years ago, I was like, how can I pay the bills? How can I make sure that we don't go hungry? And I was like, how can I create generational wealth for my entire family and their family?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Well,
wild.
yeah. What so like what accounted for that? 6 years is not that much. Some people spend,
It's not that much.
no, some people spend like double or triple that trying to grow as much as you have. What do you think accounted for that much growth in that short amount of time?
When I was 12, a freshman in high school, my English teacher mocked my intelligence in front of the class.
Oh my gosh.
It was awful thinking back, and I hadn't really processed how much of a gift that was in my life until recently. Um, but I went through the rest of my life until just a few months ago, thinking I was stupid, that people were better than me, that I was inferior. So what does a kid do who doesn't want to be stupid but thinks he's stupid do? He works his ass off. So I like finished college not because I wanted to get a degree, just because I didn't want to fail. I got into sales, didn't want to fail again, so I started reading books and books and started consuming this stuff. Now I've realized I've always been brilliant and I'm more than enough. But that revelation has like changed, the way I perceive myself. A lot of just like focusing on like what are some unuseful thoughts that I'm having about myself that I should clean up. Like I'm and that's super vague, but that's the thing that's had the most lift for me. It's like, hey, I stand in my way more times than not. It's like, hey, I probably can never be a millionaire. I had a conversation with my dad the other day. I was like, hey, like I'm gonna be the first millionaire in the family. That's hard to say because he's been, two, three jobs his whole life, making ends meet. It was just something scary to say, and he was so excited for me. Um, it's just like taking like for me, it's like I can't do that. Like I would make my dad feel bad if I achieve that kind of success, and it's be like, no, like I can. Why not? I'll tell him about it. It was awesome. It was beautiful. Um, I hope there's some things to Townsend Wardlaw and his wife Louisa are the two people that have really helped me go kind of this huge trajectory straight up. Um, they're the ones who introduced me to phone ready lead boys and put me in this trajectory.
That's amazing. Wow. There's there's so much to be said about the belief stuff, like the understanding your why at a really, really deep level
Mhm.
and having alignment there. Like does what I'm doing align with my deepest why? If it doesn't, why?
Yeah, yeah, like what's going on there, right? And the cool part of like that story of my freshman teacher is like I'm not that 13-year-old in class anymore. But tell you what, if my son gets cancer, knock on wood, right? Something happens where I need to, hey, wake that kid up. Hey, some stuff's going on. We gotta dive into some books. We gotta learn. We gotta study. We gotta prove ourselves. Like I can call on that guy whenever I want. He's just not running the show anymore.
Mm, interesting. Do you have there's a this was a really cool thing that I learned at one point. The fact that different high performers like Beyonce, for example, or um, what's his name? Kobe Bryant. They
Cool.
both, yeah, they both have like alter not egos, I guess, but kind of alter egos.
Yeah.
And then they turn on one and they turn off the other. It's like, Black Mamba versus Kobe. You know what I mean? And Beyonce, and then I think it's Sasha Fierce. Like it does. Is that helpful? Would that be helpful for somebody in sales
Yeah.
almost?
Heck yeah.
Just turn it on.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, they call me the machine
Really?
at Phone Ready Leads. Yeah. I like got in, like I closed my first 3 deals. Bang, 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 bang. I'm the machine. So if I go into a sales meeting, I don't think about this much, but I should. As the machine, that's a much different conversation than I go in as a 13-year-old that was called stupid in front of class.
Mm-hmm.
Same exact Keith Dawson, same exact guy. But do I have the mentality of the machine or the stupid kid in class? And that's being in a very short time. But yeah, Black Mamba. Who else has that? Yeah, I forget. But yeah,
There are a
absolutely.
lot.
There's a lot of people that do that. Yeah, but here's the cool thing: like you can choose whoever you want to be. Like I could be Black Mamba right now and just embody that vision, or yeah, like we kind of put our own limitations and we tell ourselves what we should or shouldn't be doing based on our experiences of how we acted or behaved or thought, and the positive or negative reinforcements that were associated with that. Yeah, you get to choose. Like that's what a powerful idea. You can be Kobe or you can be Black Mamba, right? Like that's right. You don't turn Black Mamba on in front of the kids, right? You're a different different guy there. But anyways, the alter ego. David Goggins is what I was thinking of. He always talks about that. If you're familiar with motivational, but he's pretty crass, but fun to be a part of or listen to.
Yeah, he's a lot. He's definitely a lot.
Yeah, right. So he could be David Goggins, or he could be that fat kid that, you know, couldn't get into the Marines, or I forget what he was.
Okay, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you one more thing about sales. So strategy. Strategy, how do you approach strategy? And like, so there's first the strategy of a business, like a business strategy, like an agency strategy, but then there's also strategy on an individual level. Let's go individual and then agency, and obviously not too deep on it, but like just how you approach it, how you look at it.
Yeah, so as like an individual contributor, you always are looking at 4 things: list, rep, message, channel. So the list is, who are you trying to talk with? Who's your ideal prospect? And then, how do you know they're your ideal prospect? That's things you have to work on. But like, who should you be talking to? Who would benefit from your solution? Who has a problem that you can solve for? And then then the message is, what are you going to say to them that's going to result in the desired response? Usually it's a book meeting, but I would argue that knowing if it's even a good solution or if they're interested at all is just as good as not getting a meeting, because everyone's going for meetings, me included. But it's like, hey, if I know their timing is off, it's useful for me to know, hey, 6 months from now it's more relevant than following up, opposed to like, hey, let's just book something just to book it, just to show I have activity. Anyways, message, right? So what are you actually saying to them? Then while you're talking to them, while you have this script, actually using something on, Word doc, following like a written script, then noticing where are things going well, where are things falling apart, and making little micro tweaks after you have maybe 10 to 15 conversations. Don't just tweak things just because one person told you to fly a kite. Keep grinding. And then the channel, that's what we do. We do channel verification. Which channel are they most likely to engage in? Social, email, phone, or your network. And then rep is like, are you putting in the work? Are you actually making the attempts? Are you sending the emails? Are you working on yourself to become better? Those 4 things, like always comes back to list, rep, message, and channel to be effective cold calling or prospecting.
Interesting. That's helpful. And then on the larger side, whenever it comes to an agency, so as an agency owner, you're thinking about a lot of different parts, but so you're thinking about vision, but you're also thinking, okay, scale, and then execution on the day-to-day. How do you approach the strategy on that level where like you're determining things? I think that's my favorite part about like owning businesses or like being the decision maker, is that you're determining the trajectory. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think about what can we do in the next 12 to 18 months, opposed to what can we do today, or like what can be accomplished in 2 or 3 months, opposed to 12 or 18 months. Because there's this idea, right, that you overestimate what you can do in 1 year, and you underestimate what you can do in 5 years. So knowing like, hey, our time horizon needs to be pushed out further. Let's have some wins today. Let's try to. Right now, it's all about client acquisition for where I'm at. Let's have conversations with people, knowing that I'm going to be around for a while. That 2 years from now, I'll still be here. So why don't we have conversations that would make it sound like we're going to be around for a while, instead of like, hey, let's book you today. Let's try to get this sold. And then just kind of reverse engineering what kind of goals, revenue goals do I want to hit? How many people I need to get there? How many people should I have on my team to reach that goal? And then even more, like the thing I focus the most on is like, how do I make these people who are on my team feel incredible, that they can't wait to come, right? The thing that we talked about at the start of this. How does this become a place that's fun and they feel loved and appreciated and cared for? Obviously, you're gonna have hard conversations in there. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, let's jump into rapid fire questions. Don't think too much about these answers. They're actually pretty simple, so I don't think that that'll be a problem. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. First question: what is the biggest challenge that you faced in SaaS?
Yeah, it's kind of getting into the right people to talk with and just the closing deals part.
Nice. What do you wish you knew whenever you started this journey?
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's okay to fail. It's okay to learn. Lean on the people who are your leadership and get them to buy into your success. Tie it
I
to their
love
success too, right? Like, hey, like I'm trying to do this, it'll make you do this. Like, I would love your help, right? Because people will help if you ask, right?
Mm-hmm. And my last question, so you know the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle?
Pareto. Yeah.
Yes. What is one way that you've seen the 80-20 principle play out in terms of success in your life?
In my life or in business or
Well, we can do so. Let's do business, and then I mean, just an
yeah,
extra.
business.
I'd love to hear your other one, the life as
hmm
well.
hmm I would honestly like the way, again, this all goes back to cold calling. It's structuring my day. So the two things I'm focusing on the most is meeting with clients or trying to meet with clients. Like that, is that 80-20? Maybe, but that's of the time that I'm spent every day. If I spend 80% of my time on that, everything else is going to take care of itself. Like all the admin stuff I get to do will work out.
Interesting. That's really fascinating. And then on the side of your life.
Um, just being connected with my family, like the
Mm,
4 other humans that are in this house, has been like such a gift to me. Um, yeah,
I love that.
they are my why.
I
They
love
very
that.
much are.
Oh
And
my
it's like,
goodness.
yeah, not sacrificing their well-being or their special moments for anything work related, client
Mm,
related. It's been a pretty sweet ride
it
with them.
sounds like it. Okay, the final question that is resource related, is there anything that you would like to leave people with, either recommended resources, books to check out, podcasts to listen to, something to help people to do their jobs better or to be better humans?
Yeah, so I'll give you a PDF version of a book called Outbound Sales No Fluff that
Sweet.
literally talks, it's like 60 pages long. Um, it's a PDF version of it, but anyone who wants it, you can send it over, reference me. But it talks about cold calling and how to process your cold calling, your mindset of cold calling. So for anyone who's beginning in SaaS and wants to take up the role of SDR, this is a brilliant way to break into it. using that book. And then check me out on LinkedIn, Keith Dawson. I put out some interesting posts every once in a while. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, likewise. Like I said, I was super nervous. I was like, what am I going to say? But you navigate and ask such good questions. I never once was nervous about the conversation. So you're brilliant. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.